Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a new ban on living in cars. The city of San Diego updates its ban after complaints from local neighborhoods. And a data breach involving women with HIV. An iNewsSource investigation reveals UC San Diego never told them their information was compromised.
But when we take a look at where the different meals are coming from, and we see that only 9% of those meals are coming from privately supported food distributions, we begin to see what's at stake.
Food benefits are expanding for some, but cuts might be made elsewhere. The strain on local charities.
We don't know where that information is coming from. If the threat's being made in another state and it's coming across state lines, well, that's going to be very, very difficult for us to investigate.
And the challenge for local police when it comes to threats made online. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Wednesday, May 15th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. San Diego will soon enforce new rules on living in cars. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says the city's decision came after more than an hour of public testimony for and against the ban.
And this situation with living in the vans is a problem.
My car keeps me safe. My car protects me from having to be on the streets.
You are creating a massive free-for-all that is being taken advantage of by people who are not homeless by circumstance.
If you support this ban, stop saying you care about the homeless.
The City Council voted Tuesday to prohibit people from living in their cars from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. in San Diego.
And that passes 6-3.
Among those who voiced their concerns about the ordinance was someone many of the council members are familiar with.
I was a part of electing some of the members of this council.
Will Rodriguez Kennedy is chair of the San Diego County Democratic Party and for a time was homeless himself.
I was discharged from the United States Marine Corps under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. As a result of that, I became homeless.
Rodriguez Kennedy was speaking in his personal capacity and believes people who are forced to live in their cars are often forgotten about.
I don't think that they're looking at these people as people who are suffering.
He feels the city council wasn't acting with compassion for people who have to sleep in their cars.
I think that the ordinance as it's constructed is immoral. It's inhumane. The reality is the city has failed on homelessness as a crisis.
The city has 2 parking lots where people can park and sleep overnight. By next month, there will be a 3rd lot open in Mission Valley that will be able to accommodate RVs. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Next month, food assistance will expand to thousands of people in San Diego. But KPBS health reporter Susan Murphy says that some people who already receive CalFresh could see cuts.
Here at the Salvation Army in El Cajon, hundreds of people have been waiting in line for hours to pick up a bag of groceries they say they can't afford on their own.
Most of us are facing difficulties because the rents are high.
66-year-old Jamil Sharice was among 250 people who started lining up before sunrise on East Main Street. Like the others, he relies on charities for some of his meals. On this morning, he's at the San Diego Food Bank distribution to pick up canned foods, rice, fruit, meat.
We'll get meat, vegetables, yeah.
But starting June 1st, he'll be eligible to apply for CalFresh, formerly known as food stamps. CalFresh helps people struggling with poverty to put meals on the table. The federally funded program is being expanded to people with disabilities like Sharice, who are on Supplemental Security Income, or SSI.
And the CalFresh will help us to get much food from the stores.
Connie Rios is also on SSI and plans to apply for CalFresh. The 63-year-old says she stands in food distribution lines 3 times each week.
I need more, yes. I need more help for food.
But while the program is being expanded for some with disabilities, the Trump administration is proposing cuts for people considered able-bodied adults. San Diego Hunger Coalition Executive Director Anahid Braki says the president's proposed 20% cut over time would be devastating.
Would require our food banks and their 500 partners across the county to double what they do to make up that difference.
Brecky's team recently analyzed where people in San Diego County living in poverty get their meals. They found 91% come from federally funded programs, including CalFresh.
When we take a look at where the different meals are coming from, and we see that only 9% of those meals are coming from privately supported food distributions, we begin to see what's at stake.
The average CalFresh benefit for a single-person household comes out to $4.07 per day. Jamil Sharif says he's very grateful, but knows he'll still need a little extra help. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
24 women with HIV had their personal information exposed in an October data breach for a UC San Diego study. 7 months later, and they still have not been notified. iNews Source investigative reporter Jill Castellano joins us with more on this story. Welcome.
Thank you.
Jill, so what was the nature of this study?
This was a study by a researcher named Jamila Stockman at UCSD. She was enrolling women into this study who had HIV who are not currently in treatment. And she thought, if I help them and help them get treatment for some other things that they're dealing with, trauma, domestic violence, mental illness, substance abuse, that maybe they'll be more engaged in their HIV treatment and want to get help. So the women in this study are marginalized and vulnerable, and that's why they were recruited into this study, and they were exposing a lot of personal and confidential information over the course of this research.
And can you expand on that? What type of information would have been included?
Well, all of the information in this study was exposed during this breach. The university was partnering with a nonprofit called Christie's Place, based in San Diego, and they were recruiting women into this study because they support women with HIV. So all of their data at Christie's Place was put on the wrong server, and as a result of that, anyone at this nonprofit, volunteers, interns, could access this data. That includes participants' names, email addresses, survey responses, even audio-taped focus group conversations.
So which of the institutions or agencies would have been responsible for this data breach? Was it UC San Diego or was it this Christie's Place?
Well, by all accounts, this happened at Christie's Place by people at Christie's Place. And according to UCSD documents, the allegations here are that this was an intentional data breach, that there were managers at Christie's Place who wanted to put the information on the wrong server, even though it was supposed to be password protected information and completely confidential. They put it on the wrong server where they typically store information about patients receiving clinical care, because then they could inflate the number of patients receiving their clinical care, allegedly, and bill the county for those extra patients. That is something that Christie's Place has denied when we asked them for comment.
So is there any indication that this personal information was actually accessed and exposed?
Well, we can't really know. It's a good question. I talked to a couple of experts in data privacy for this story. They basically said, once you've given more people access to this data, it's really hard to know what they did with it. If they made an extra copy of the keys, to the castle. Did someone go in, find it, and transfer it off of the server and spread it? We can't really tell. Maybe that happened, but maybe it didn't happen at all. So we're kind of up in the air on that. UCSD has said that Christie's Place has not been fully cooperative and forthcoming, and they're still waiting to get confirmation from Christie's Place that the information has been taken down from their servers.
Now, once this data breach was discovered, you report that UC San Diego Human Research Protection Program Director apparently told researchers not to tell the women involved. Does that make this a cover-up?
Well, the way that we describe it in the story that I wrote for iNews Source with Brad Racino is repeated delays to notify these women. And our story chronicles over the course of the last 7 months what has happened since the researcher did the right thing and notified the university that this breach had occurred. We see back and forth conversations with her saying, what's the progress? Are we going to notify these women? And the university saying, well, let's make sure we check with our lawyers and let's make sure that we cover all of our bases before we do anything. Then it ends up in January that the leader of the Human Research Protection Program actually sends the researchers an email saying, you can notify these participants, but don't include anything about the breach. Information should be limited. So I don't know that it's my place to use the word cover up, but it's definitely been heavily delayed.
So 7 months later, does the school have any intentions of now notifying the women involved?
Yes, we did get a statement from UCSD for this story. They said they expect to begin face-to-face meetings to tell these women what happened in about 1 to 3 weeks. They also said that there was no consideration of liability, and that's not why this was delayed. And they said that this information is important and that the protection of the participants in the study is very important to them.
Very interesting, great work. iNews Source investigative reporter Jill Castellano.
Thank you.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, the abortion divide. Alabama passes the most restrictive law in the nation as Vermont enshrines the right in their constitution. It's coming up at 7 right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
CAL FIRE says the deadliest wildfire in state history was caused by power lines. Investigators traced the start of the campfire to equipment owned by Pacific Gas and Electric. The fire killed 85 people and destroyed thousands of homes and other buildings. PG&E has no comment on CAL FIRE's report. The company filed for bankruptcy in January. The Trump administration will not join an international agreement to reduce online extremism. The Christchurch call is an agreement among nearly 20 nations and several major tech companies. It's in response to the New Zealand mosque attacks, which the shooter live streamed. The White House says it supports the agreement's overall message, but cannot endorse it due to free speech concerns. Prosecutors say online extremism also played a role in the Poway synagogue shooting. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar looks into how law enforcement tracks online threats.
On the last day of Passover celebrations, a gunman entered this synagogue in Poway, opened fire, killing one 60-year-old congregant and injuring 3 others. According to authorities, the suspect, 19-year-old John Ernest, had no criminal record and no prior interactions with law enforcement.
We're collecting digital evidence, and we're aware of his manifesto, which we're in the process of reviewing to determine its validity and authenticity.
That manifesto was reportedly posted on an online message board called 8chan. It's the same website that was allegedly used by a suspect charged with murdering 50 people at 2 mosques in New Zealand in March. The site welcomes users to the, quote, darkest reaches of the internet and promotes free speech above all else.
We're talking about individuals who are self-radicalized through the internet.
Daryl Foxworth is a retired FBI special agent with 30 years of experience.
Now, how does that occur? Through a number of ways. I mean, they go on the internet, they identify chat rooms, social media sites, things of that nature, and they start, ingesting this, digesting this internally, and then they find some reason to identify with these groups and take violent actions against others.
He says federal law enforcement agents will sometimes monitor chat rooms when they're involved in specific investigations.
Everything that they do, it's going to be done based on the law. They're not going to break the law to enforce it. So you're going to make sure that you have a court order or some lawful authority that's going to allow you to do that.
Because the internet is vast, that monitoring usually happens at the federal level. And when a specific threat is identified, the agency involved in the investigation will pass that information on to their regional field offices, who will then work in cooperation with a local law enforcement agency. Lieutenant Sean Takeuchi is with the San Diego Police Department.
In terms of internet, monitoring the internet, that's something very, very difficult to do because, again, that credibility has to exist. And so oftentimes we rely on our federal partners for that. With the internet, we don't know where that information is coming from. If the threat's being made in another state and it's coming across state lines, well, that's going to be very, very difficult for us to investigate.
He says another challenge is identifying whether a threat on the internet is criminal and credible, or if it could be protected by freedom of speech.
We have the Bill of Rights. We have the First Amendment and freedom of speech. So in this country, we have the ability to say things that we want to say without fear of prosecution, without fear of government intervention.
According to the California Penal Code, a criminal threat is defined as a willful threat to commit a crime that will result in death or bodily injury to another person. The threat can be made in writing, verbally, or by electronic communication. Today, those threats have become even more difficult to track thanks to encryption services and private chat rooms. Mark Heckman is a cybersecurity professor at the University of San Diego.
As new tools are developed, the governments or law enforcement comes up with countermeasures, which forces the development of new measures, and that's never ending. And I don't see that we'll ever have the last word on that. It's very difficult to stay up on what's new, on the latest thing that's happening. Any tool that can be used for good could also be used for evil.
He says trying to find a balance between monitoring the internet and maintaining privacy is an ongoing debate.
We're out on the boundary between privacy and security, and perfect privacy and perfect security are, I think, both impossible.
Federal authorities have charged the suspect in the Poway shootings with 109 counts of hate crimes. That includes setting fire to a mosque in Escondido. He also faces state charges of murder and attempted murder. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
San Diego City Council supports a police reform bill authored by Assemblywoman Shirley Weber. Weber was among more than 100 people who spoke on the issue during Tuesday's public hearing. Assembly Bill 392 would change the standards for law enforcement and the use of deadly force. The resolution passed 6-2. Weber says the state assembly will vote on her bill next week. Criminal justice is part of the conversation around legalizing marijuana. In New Jersey, there's a debate over how it will affect the legal system. Brenda Flanagan of NJTV has a look at marijuana arrest and the racial disparities.
I was on my way to the studio to record, and I had an X amount of marijuana on me because I was going to meet some friends.
But musician Ezekiel Edge's life took a sudden detour when Patterson police arrested him this past November and charged him with possession of marijuana, which he admits, and intent to distribute, which he denies. Conviction could mean jail, a $25,000 fine, and a criminal record that could deprive the 29-year-old Edge of jobs and loans. But because he lives in federally subsidized Section 8 housing with his mom and disabled brother, a marijuana conviction could also mean eviction for his entire family, even though Edge has no priors.
Yeah, I can really lose my home and be homeless. So that's a big stress on me as his little brother and as my mother's son, because I'm their primary supporter.
Marijuana is absolutely a gateway drug to the criminal justice system. And we see that every single day in our neighborhoods.
Civil rights advocate Reverend Charles Boyer considers Edge a statistic. The FBI reports local cops in New Jersey arrested more than 32,000 marijuana users in 2016. That's over 600 a week, among the most aggressive marijuana arrest rates in the nation. Like Edge, 36% of them are African American, 1 in 3, in a state that's just 13% black. Nationally, the ACLU reported half of all drug arrests are for marijuana, and blacks are 3.7 times more likely to be arrested for possession than whites, despite roughly equal usage rates.
Marijuana is basically legal for whites in New Jersey. The racial disparities are stark. You're far more likely in New Jersey to be arrested and convicted over minor marijuana charges as a black person than if you're white. Legalization is important to try and get at this major racial disparity.
10 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized adult recreational marijuana use, most by referendum. This March, New Jersey lawmakers postponed a vote to become the 11th, yanking a package of bills that would legalize the use and regulated sale of marijuana for adults over age 21 and expunge the criminal records of thousands of New Jersey residents convicted of possession.
It's still a very hard vote because it's a vote of conscience on a lot of people, and just some people, you can't twist arms, you have to try to convince.
Somebody's going to be harmed by legalizing this.
Consider State Senator Ron Rice a hard no vote. The former Newark police detective conjures an ominous vision of college kids lured from wealthy white suburbs. Many have already preemptively banned marijuana sales to what he calls marijuana bodegas that would pop up on his city's street corners.
They're going to come down the street to buy a cupcake or a marijuana piece of candy. I know that somebody is going to be killed in front of my office or violently assaulted for the cupcake, the money, and everything else.
Rice believes legalizing sales is more about reaping a marijuana tax windfall for the state than correcting social injustice. Instead, he would expunge criminal records and then decriminalize the possession of small amounts of marijuana for personal use. 14 states have already opted to decriminalize marijuana. It could save New Jersey an estimated $140 million it currently spends on court and incarceration for low-level marijuana cases. But enforcement concerns remain. Police arrest more than 1 million impaired drivers every year in the U.S., and New Jersey's a densely populated state with heavy traffic.
And the problem is, if you legalize it, more people are going to probably drive high. So not only is it a safety issue, but the enforcement issue. And so I'm very concerned as a prosecutor about that.
I know Washington State, when they first legalized, saw a 33% increase in their cases involving cannabis. It's bound to happen.
Because you can't take a breathalyzer test for marijuana, Lieutenant Chris Dudzik trains officers to be drug recognition experts. Jersey's got 560 of them, behind only California. He says the state will need more because people don't realize how powerful marijuana products can be.
Some of these products have 80 to 90% THC in them, which are causing huge amounts of impairment. And it can remain in the system effective for 2 to 4 hours, that they're still going to feel these effects.
New Jersey offers grants to pay for DRE training. Ezekiel Edge, meanwhile, is trying to get into a pretrial intervention program for first offenders, which would expunge his record. He's determined to protect his mom.
And I'm always going to be there for her and love her and care for her the best way I can.
In Paterson, New Jersey, I'm Brenda Flanagan, NJTV News.
Tomorrow is the 29th annual Bike to Work Day. The San Diego Association of Governments invited commuters to ditch the car and pedal to work. There are 100 pit stops for cyclists from Oceanside to San Ysidro. There's even an unofficial pit stop across the border in Tijuana. In 2018, San Diego ranked the 6th worst in the nation for smog. Imperial Beach Mayor Serge Dedina says cleaning up our air doesn't have to be a struggle.
Reducing our emissions and making our air cleaner doesn't have to be that hard. It can be, we can have fun doing it, and really getting people out on their bicycles is a really cost-effective, easy, simple way to get people healthier and happier and have a better quality of life and do a lot to address our climate crisis.
Some cyclists may get wet. Rain is expected tomorrow in San Diego. Dajia Swad has tonight's forecast.
We are unsettled here across the western half of the U.S., which is really unseasonable for this time of year. Here's a look at the radar from earlier today, tracking out a low pressure system that continues to move inland. As we see this system press its way inland, we're noticing winds pick up out towards the higher ground. So in Borrego Springs, extending into Palm Springs, Big Bear Lake, high wind advisory in effect at least until 11 a.m. Friday at this point in time. We can see some gusts for tonight in these locations. Up to 45 miles per hour, but Thursday another peak of winds. We're going to see some gusts up to 60 miles per hour, leading to the chance for some power outages. Tonight in San Diego, low clouds with a low 63 as we wait for precipitation to approach. Also noticing lots of clouds for Oceanside with the low 60, lower 60s for Borrego Springs and 45 in Mount Laguna, and also in that cloudy zone. Now, here's what we're talking about. An unusual May storm. Low pressure continues to track its way inland Wednesday night into our Thursday. Thunderstorms, some hail across California, even some snow as you move into the higher grounds. And this will be causing some travel delays all up and down Interstate 5. Now, tonight, not a lot of precipitation, but we definitely notice more clouds building in towards Southern California. 6 a.m., there goes our wet weather just to the west of us. This will continue to make its way inland as we head into the 9 and 10 o'clock hour. And we're talking some heavy bouts of rain, potentially where you see those yellows, blobs or cells, I should say, out towards Oceanside and towards San Diego around 10 a.m. This will continue to press its way towards the east, diminishing as we head into your Thursday night with a chance for some more wet weather to pop back up in spots Thursday, 8 p.m. So tomorrow it is unsettled as we head into your late morning. 68 in Oceanside, 67 in San Diego, 77 Borrego Springs, 50 in Mount Laguna with wet weather. And here's an idea. So San Diego, rain potential for this storm 0.25 inches of rain, when usually we are only looking at 0.12 inches of rain for the month of May. So we're going to be a bit above average as the storm continues to dump down what it says it does. Late week will get a bit drier, but heading into the extended forecast, we will be talking about another chance for wet weather Sunday with showers around. Also going to be looking at showers inland for your Sunday, and our temperatures feeling a bit cool. Deserts in the 70s for tomorrow and Friday, and then drier Saturday. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swan. Back to you.
Here's a recap of tonight's top stories. The San Diego City Council approves a limited ban on people living in their cars. It will be illegal for people to sleep in vehicles from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. within 500 feet of a residence or school. CalFresh will expand benefits to those who receive disability benefits next month. That's about 95,000 people in San Diego County. CAL FIRE says last year's Camp Fire was caused by power lines owned by PG&E. The utility filed for bankruptcy earlier this year. 85 people died as a result of the fire, making it the deadliest in state history. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.